The next talk should be of interest to anybody looking to streamline their reporting, and it's a hands-on talk from Michelle Vickerman about using Supermetrics and Google Sheets to get the best out of your analysis. Let's hear it for Michelle.
What I want to show you today is actually more about how I can kind of show you some other tools, so using Supermetrics to bring everything together into Google Sheets, and how we can be a little bit more automated and a little bit smarter with our reporting, and it's a bit of a dirty word in search, but maybe forecasting as well. So in case there was any confusion, I am going to be talking about Google Sheets, not Excel. I may mention Excel as well, and strangely Numbers, if any of you guys use that. I don't know why, but some people do. Supermetrics is absolutely invaluable. If you're not using it, I would really encourage you to use it. As we've already heard, I think it was Matthew who mentioned that you can use separate add-ons for things like search analytics for Sheets, Google Analytics, they all have their own separate add-ons. What Supermetrics does is actually just brings all the data into one place and allows you to actually manage it from one central place. The really positive side of that is that you can then refresh all. So come reporting day, you can just refresh all of your data pulls in one go, and then it's all sorted, and you can manage those in one place. You can also set up scheduling and emailing, so this is where the automation comes in. You can set up your scheduling for your, say, reporting day, first of the month, set up your reports, set your schedule, and you can have your client report on your desk or in your email by the time you get into the office. They do also have a template gallery. I haven't really used it much. There's a lot of really good templates out there. I'll share a few after this talk. Just some templates of reports, forecasts. I also use Supermetrics for things like keyword research, any kind of backlink analysis, competitor analysis, pretty much everything you can think of. I'm also going to talk today about Majestic. I know some of you guys will be absolute die-hard Ahrefs fans. As far as I know, Ahrefs actually doesn't have a plugin for an add-on for Google Sheets, either on its own or through Supermetrics. So Majestic, if you're doing any kind of backlink analysis in Sheets, Majestic is really invaluable. So let's start at the beginning. I know that some of you guys, this will be way too basic for you, but one of the first things, we talked about data a lot today. I think it was Matthew again who said, or Azim maybe, that you can't have enough, you can never have too much data. But it's all well and good having loads and loads of data if you haven't cleaned it up. So this is something that I think often you can fall down, particularly if you're pulling data sources from different places. Make sure your cursor is in the right place, things like that. Just make sure you're using clean data. So this is actually a new feature that Sheets added quite recently, the remove duplicates. I would say it's not as good as using some of the add-ons. I use an add-on called remove duplicates, in case that's confusing. The Sheets one I don't find very good, just because if you highlight a column, you want to remove the duplicates, it will delete those cells and then shift everything up, so all your rows will become then mismatched. Whereas some of the add-ons actually just allow you to, things like clear values or highlight some of the duplicates, and you can kind of manage it your own way. Strip to unique, you can use the unique formula. So if you want to keep your raw data with all of the duplicates in a separate tab, you want to pull only the unique data into a new tab, you can use the top example, which is just will pull through either a column or a full data range of data, or you can use the bottom example, which will pull through the unique data from multiple data sources, so multiple tabs using an array with the curly braces split with a semicolon. This is particularly useful if you're doing things like working with the marketing team to merge your CRM data, so you've got Salesforce in one tab, MailChimp in another, and then a random Excel spreadsheet of email addresses. You can kind of use that to pull all the clean ones into one tab. Trimming the white space. So this, again, is a new thing that Sheets added, I think, only in the last couple of months. You used to have to use Formula to do this. It's particularly useful if you're trying to gather loads of URLs and you've pulled through and you know that there's spaces on the ends of URLs. This just trims all of that out really easily. Filtering. So slicers have recently been added in the last kind of month or so, I think. Really useful. Finally, we've got them. I think actually Excel was better than Sheets for this. So slices, you can put them, once you've got all your clean data and you've got your pivot tables and things like that, you can add as many slices as you want just to kind of play around with your data there. Named ranges. So this is one that I think most people actually don't use, but if you know that you're going to be writing lots and lots of formula, and you know you're going to need to reference back to your specific data sets multiple times, just name that data set. So for example, something that I would do if I had pulled into a tab GA data, just name that whole range GA data, and then you know that you're calling on the right thing. It also auto-fills in the formula bar, so if you start typing GA, you can just select it instead of having to manually click onto the tab, highlight the range that you need, and then click back in for the formula. Another really good thing about Sheets, obviously the guys in the previous stack just talked about it. You can obviously go use BigQuery. So Adam talked about this morning. I won't go into any real detail. I don't tend to use it that much purely because none of the data sets I'm working with need to go that big, but obviously it's there if you need to. Using Data Studio, so my second caveat of the talk is that I tend to use Data Studio for most of my reporting. The reason I'm talking to you about Sheets today is because we want to try and pull most of the data into Sheets, manipulate it how we want, and then set it up as a data source into Data Studio. And then you've got everything in one place. But it's just about being a little bit smarter and a little bit more efficient with how we're using Sheets into Data Studio. Asking for help. So this is one thing that very, very basic, but I still use all the time. I would definitely consider myself quite good at Google Sheets. I mean, I'm talking to you here today, so hopefully I'm better than most, but I still have to use the help function, so just toggle F1 on and off. It's particularly useful, so in this example where you're layering multiple formula over the other and you want to make sure that the structure of each one is correct, just toggle it on and off if you get errors. This one is my favorite error. Tell me, Sheets, what's the error? It's a formula error. So that's always an annoying one to get. So again, that's where I would kind of toggle F1 on and off. I'm going to share a little bit of a cheat sheet afterwards, just how to diagnose some of the common errors and how to sort of get them less visible on your sheets as well. Another helpful hint, if you know that you're going to be copying and pasting a formula to different cells, but you know that you always need to reference one cell every single time you copy and paste that formula, you can lock it using function F4. So in this example, I know that for every sum that I want to do, I want it to be added to B2. So I've just selected B2 and hit function F4. And so B2 is always locked, and you can funnel through function F4 and it'll lock it either to the whole cell, just to the column, just to the row, or a whole range if that's what you're calling on in the formula. So now we've got all the fundamentals right, we can start building up our spreadsheets and just making sure that our templates are ready, so come reporting day, everything can be refreshed and everything's done at the click of a button. I always like to start at the end. We've heard a lot again about how we want to show data to our clients, and for me, I always like to start at the end and think about what's the story. Who am I going to be showing this report to? Is it the SEO manager? Are they going to have to then report into their CMO? Is it the CEO who needs to see the numbers? What's the story that we want to tell, and how are we going to tell that story? Once we know that, we can start pulling our data. So I always use Supermetrics, as I said before, because it pulls in through one place. I can then refresh it very, very easily. I can also schedule the refreshes, so it's not even manual. I don't have to think about it at all. I tend to use SEMrush, Search Console, and Analytics for monthly reports. Again, if any of our clients we're doing link building for, then we would use Majestic as well. If we want to see a cause and effect on some of the technical and on-page changes, I would use a crawl as well, just paste it in manually. You can have that. Again, you can set your streaming for a call to go kind of scheduled in, so you can just paste that in once it's done. So this is how you'd pull your data. I know some of you guys are familiar with this if you're using it already. Go to your add-ons. As you can see, I do still use Search Analytics for Sheets and Analytics. Google Merchant Center is also a really good one. Once you click on Supermetrics, you'll launch your sidebar, which is the little pop-out on the right. And this is where we can start getting smarter and automating things. So again, as this has recently been added or sort of changed in Data Studio, so you can now make it relative. Exactly the same in Supermetrics, so always set things to last month or last 12 months if you're doing annual reviews, or quarterly reviews, last 3 months. Try not to use the custom date range, because obviously then that is locked to the previous month, so if you come to refresh the following month, it's going to be completely out of whack. Name your tabs. This is such a basic one, but the amount of spreadsheets that I've tried to go in and play around with and figure out what's going on that have been named like Sheet 1, Sheet 5, GA data, and no one knows what's going on, everything's all over the place. If you're as OCD as me, you can also color coordinate all of them. Obviously, I will go through and do that for every single one. I also like to have an instructions tab. You never know if you're going to be away for the next reporting day, or if you might have got a new job and you need someone to do an end of year forecast and you're not there. Just have a little bit of a cheat sheet guide for whoever might be picking that up after you. Name your ranges. So again, we're cycling back to the name your ranges. Try and use a consistent naming convention to what you've named your tabs, so you actually know what you're talking about. The amount of times that I've done this myself, I might have 3 different Search Console tabs, one for URL data, one for keyword level data, and one for site-wide data, and my ranges are GSC 123. That's not very helpful, so try and be consistent. You can also name specific columns. So in an example I'll show you later, if I know that I only need to know the H1 length column, for example, just name that column H1 length, and then you know what you're referencing at all times. So using basic formula, I'm sure some of you guys are aware of how to use basic formula, so I won't kind of linger on this too much, but it's really just about combining some of your formulas so you can speed yourself up. So instead of having specific single formulas, you can actually pull things through in multiple columns using multiple formula. So in this example, we just want to highlight which pages are ranking on page 2 and which are not. Very, very simple. We're using if and. Super, super straightforward. Similarly, if we wanted to have a count of what's ranking on page 1 and page 2, we would use the count if and count ifs, unsurprisingly is the plural of count if, and then a count A, which is just the total values of the data set. So in this instance, in our report, we just want to see at a very, very top level view what's ranking page 1, page 2, and then what's the total ranking keywords that we currently have. So now moving a little bit beyond some of the really, really basic ones. I'm sure you're all familiar with VLOOKUP. If you aren't, you should familiarize yourself because it's great. I've yet to have a spreadsheet that doesn't use it. VLOOKUP is basically just looking for a key identifier. So that could be a cell or it could be a string in a range, and then it returns you a subsequent column relative to what you requested. What I discovered fairly recently is actually you can do this in an array. I know that Excel has recently brought out the XLOOKUP, or it's in beta form at the moment if any of you guys use Excel. Using an array formula with a VLOOKUP kind of does a similar thing in that you can now pull through multiple columns using one VLOOKUP, which is particularly useful, again, if you're trying to save time. You want reporting day sheets sometimes struggles to cycle through all of the formula that you've requested. What this does is just one VLOOKUP, and now you've pulled through 3 columns or as many columns as you need. So in this instance, I'm looking for organic data. I want to see traffic goals and revenue. I've also paired it with the transpose, if you guys are familiar with that. What transpose does is basically it swaps over. If you're returning columns and you want to see it as rows, transpose flips it, and vice versa. Now some slightly more complex formulas. So people get a little bit nervous about using things like regex replace and regex extract. I certainly don't know regex. A lot of my formula is copied and pasted from what I can find on Stack Overflow. I'll definitely share a cheat sheet of some of my favorite ones, things like strip URLs to a root domain or strip URLs to the slug. Particularly useful if you're doing things like URL mapping or anything like that during a migration. Import XML, very, very useful if, again, during migrations, you want to make sure you've gathered all your URLs. You can actually pull through your sitemaps directly into sheets. And I think from memory, you can have up to about 10 sitemaps all pulled through into one sheet using import XML. I think also if anyone works across paid channels, you can also pull through your shopping feed as it's a live CSV. What I'm going to talk to you more about is query. Again, much like VLOOKUP, I would use query probably more than anything in my reports and particularly forecasts. So again, I'm using the transpose, but what query, the sort of structure of it is you look in the data range. So in this instance, I've named it SEMrush data, and I want to see the search volume and competition where the keyword matches one of my target keywords, just to see, is that still a target keyword? How's that looking this month? Now we want to look at combining everything. So we've got all of our fundamentals, we've got the kind of general overview of what our report is looking like. Now we want to take it a step further. As I think it was Matthew who talked earlier about using the weighted sort, I wish I knew that then, but what I want to do, so my brief is I can see that there's been low engagement in on some of our target URLs. So that's from my top level view. Now what I want to do is break that out and say, okay, that's my reporting sheet for the senior people. That's my CMO report. Now my next report is, okay, the SEO manager who I'm reporting into, who might ask me the difficult questions. What am I going to say to them? So I want to see the high value pages that's had low engagement in the last month, show me their page title and meta description. So for that, I'll be combining the if or VLOOKUP and query in one. It looks overwhelming, but it's very, very straightforward. Really all I'm saying is, if this URL has had less than 500 clicks or less than a 5% click-through rate, then show me their page title and meta description. Otherwise, say that the SERP engagement is fine. What I'm trying to do with showing you this isn't the specifics of the formula, but it's showing you how we can start automating some of our reports and layering on formula on top of each other to try and tell a different story. And this is where we want to circle back. What's the story you want to tell? As I said, you'd have your top level numbers for your CMO, then you might have a slightly more granular detail for your SEO manager. And what the beauty of using Supermetrics is you can refresh that data, attach that to Data Studio, and have that all clean in one report, ready to show whoever it is you need to show. So let's recap. So we need to start the fundamentals. Have you cleaned your data? Is everything in the right place? Have you refreshed it? Have you set it up in a way that it's really easy to manage? Have you named your ranges? Is it clear? Is it consistent with your tabs? Have you checked that all your formulas working? If you're happy with how it goes, you can sit back and relax, wait for reporting day, hit refresh, and then you're done.
Any last minute questions from the floor? Anybody? There's a gentleman over there.
In your experience, how hard or how easy has it been to convince the business to move to Google Sheets? And what's the most sort of common objection that you get, and how do you overcome that?
That's actually a really good question. So as an agency, we've always used Google Sheets, so it's very much, for me, it was an easy adoption. But we've noticed a lot of the guys who we've been hiring in who have come from bigger agencies who are very, very accustomed to using Excel. That has actually been a really, it's been quite a sharp learning curve. And for a while, we were actually running them both in tandem, and then we just cut that Excel license and they had to kind of bite the bullet. But I think the breadth of opportunity that comes with Google Sheets, not just obviously with Supermetrics and some of the add-ons that I talked about today, but using things like scripts, obviously the ability to plug straight into Data Studio. I think once people understand the breadth of opportunity, it's actually quite an easy sell. And it really, the mindset of running them both in tandem for a while was actually getting them to see the difference between them and get their they need to come around to the idea in their own time, and they'll see the positive sides of Google Sheets.
Yeah, I don't think Bill Gates is going to starve.
Sorry, Michelle again. It was really interesting, your talk, and it immediately went over my head. Like the initial examples were frightening, so not frightening, but complicated. And I was just wondering, I'm very interested in pursuing that line of inquiry. And what you're clearly an expert of Excel before you moved over to Sheets. What kind of resources are available for SEO and metrics in Sheets?
So there's loads of templates. Off the top of my head, I'm going to struggle. I should have written these down. There are Sheets for marketers. That is a really, really powerful tool. There's just loads and loads of templates. A bunch of them I've actually ripped and kind of sort of Frankensteined my own versions of. Ben Collins has a website. He's really good for some of the basics. He tends to take you through everything from kind of sums right up to VLOOKUPs and then onto query, which I've covered. Again, some of his examples I tend to use quite a bit. Off the top of my head, I'm going to struggle to think of any more, but yeah. If you have any kind of spreadsheets that you're stuck with, ping me on, what did I give you, Twitter. I love a good puzzle, so yeah, just send them over.